Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And the scourge and increasing veracity of anti-Semitism. We had the shooting a couple weeks ago outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. of those two fine young people that were going to get married. Now we have another horrific incident. This involves a illegal alien from Egypt who basically, horrific, vented his anger and his insanity from some people that actually survived the Holocaust that were peacefully trying to draw attention to the hostage situation in Gaza. And essentially he lit them on fire. And what I find most horrific beyond the actual incident is some of the reaction. Like you have Andrew McCabe, the disgraced ex-FBI director, who on CNN moments after said, well, there's no real clear motive here. If you don't know that, you're not too bright. Let's start with that, Dr. Lopkin, and your thoughts.
Well, not too bright is an understatement, given that he confessed to doing it and stated he did it because he wanted to kill all Zionists. There is no question about his motive. He himself said it.
Now, what's the motive? Yes, there is no question about that motive, but what's the motive of McCabe? He's not a dummy, though I just, alluded to that. He knew what was going on. So what, and he can even take it a step further. You look at CNN's overall broadcast and saying that it was a white male. Yeah, it was a white male, but they didn't dive any deeper. New York Times, an icon of liberal, let's just say in quotations, journalism, had it beyond page 15. You're telling me that there's 15 pages of more important and relevant events than that. You're crazy.
Well, bringing up the New York Times, it's an interesting case because also just this week, the New York Times reported that Israeli soldiers fired upon Palestinians who were online to get aid. Now, they reported this. Their source was Hamas.
Of course it was.
Now, when you actually dig into the story, which the Times did not do, several other media outlets did not dig into this. The actual truth of the matter is the Israeli soldiers were the ones providing the aid. It was Hamas that was shooting them. But for some reason, anti-Semitism has become so ingrained, anti-Israelism has become so ingrained in these media outlets that they report what Hamas is telling them as gospel.
Yes, I would agree with that. And it's also become a pillar of liberal democratic ideology. It just is. There's too many incidents to just poo-poo it. It is a big part of their overall belief system. And I'm sorry to say, we're not going to, elaborate too much on this, but Jewish leaders like Raskin, did he condemn it as a act of No, he went into gun control. I mean, these people are disgusting.
Well,
even the Jewish members of the Democratic Party. And where's our buddy Blumenthal, who never met a camera he didn't love?
Yeah, he doesn't like the cameras on this one. But, talking
No.
about gun control, this is actually evidence that the current laws we have for gun control work because the reason he used Molotov cocktails was because he tried to get a gun and was unable to do it because illegal immigrants cannot own firearms. So he was stopped from owning a gun, so he continued his rampage with Molotov cocktails. It also goes to show what the right has said for years, that getting rid of guns is only going to keep them out of the hands of legal gun owners. The folks that are dead set on committing crimes with guns, they're going to find ways to do it anyway, which this one actually did.
Well done. I agree 100%. But yes, I agree with that 100%. But I also find it very despicable that you have Jewish leaders like Raskin, who might be, I know he's a bright guy, went to Harvard, even though that doesn't really mean too much anymore. But what a pathetic asshole. Okay. Had nothing to do with guns anyway. But, you just, because their crazy, sick ideology trumps, no pun intended, even their own religious and ethnicity. It's really disgusting. But we do have proud Jews like Michael Rappaport. I think he had a show on VH1, and I think he does some other things, probably a podcast as well. I'm sure of that. And he basically said, hey, everyone, the cavalry, talking to Jewish people, the cavalry ain't coming because they don't give a shit. And he excoriated Black Lives Matter, among other organizations that are, oh yeah, and the LBGQ plus whatever it is now movement for not saying shit.
Yeah, Michael Rappaport was a die-hard
Dem.
liberal. He was not just Dem, he was leftist. And over the past 6 years, he has seen what the Democratic Party has become. And he is the embodiment of I didn't leave the Democrats left me. He has been critical of them. He has become a Trump supporter because, yes, Trump is all for Israel. Trump is about stamping out anti Semitism. He's about getting these people out of the country, where the Dems are dead set on protecting criminals, protecting men pretending to be women in sports. I do
The
not
list goes
understand.
on. You have an exceptionally good point, and that's why the Dems have gone off the rail. Let's just cut the shit. If it was differences with economic issues or policies, maybe some foreign relation, like it used to be in the good old days of the 90s, okay? You're kind of you're splitting hairs, so to speak. One might, potato, potato. But now you're talking about insanity. First of all, letting someone in unvetted into this country that's basically a radical Muslim extremist is a definition of insanity. Okay, giving them, he had an extended expired visa. Well, why not just give him re-up him on a work permit? I mean, you have to really think about this with this gentleman Rappaport and others. Again, when you look at the Democratic approval numbers, or what is it, 19% or something like that,
It is
it's
now
not a
19%. Yes.
Oh, okay. Poison Ivy has 15 approval. Okay, um, so it's not just by chance. It's not a. It's because they've gone into insanity land. Okay, and I think even people that are, let's just say, with the incident, with the the paraders, the incident with the flamethrower. Even if someone's not like unbelievably pro-Jewish or whatever, regular person from Peoria is looking at this, and then they're looking at the Democratic response, and it just puts another layer on the cake. Do you agree with that, Dr. Lopkin?
Yes.
Along with people like not Jamie, what's it, Crockett and AOC. It's just literally you could put these people and they'd be completely at home and at ease in a mental hospital. How do you like that?
Well, AOC just came out with a statement against anti Semitism. Now,
Yeah,
of
okay.
course, the statement has no teeth whatsoever, and it has drawn people who are not political into the political arena, calling her out. Lifelong Dems who have said, first of all, where have you been for 2 years? You've been absolutely quiet. And second of all, she is the de facto head of the squad. So why
The
has she,
anti-Semitic
yeah,
squad.
so why
And the
has
one,
she not
and the
slapped
one
down?
that cried. Wait, hold. And the one who cried when the Iron Dome funding went through 2 years ago. Cried.
Right. So if she's so concerned about anti-Semitism, why has she not slapped down Ilyan Omar, slapped down Toledo Rashid,
Crockett.
Crockett also? I mean, she actually has the ability to rein these wackos in. She's done nothing. Why is she starting to come out with statements against
Presidency.
anti-Semitism? It's not even the presidency. It's getting herself reelected next year because she has a large Jewish community in her district. She's not
Okay.
concerned about the presidency yet. She needs to make sure she can stay in Congress next year.
Any Jew that votes for her gets what they deserve. We'll just leave it at that. And basically, she could be talk about the theme of a mental hospital. Should be committed. They're voting for their own demise, and they're complete idiots. How do you like that?
Well, I think anybody of any political background, religious background in AOC's district that votes for her gets what they deserve. Crime in her district since she took office is up 70%. It's only up 20% as an average around New York City.
Yeah, well, she never gave a shit about her district. She's the one who chased out Amazon.
Right.
And she did get this bullshit about being a bartender. Okay, I pump gas. I mean, yeah, in high school, like no one's done a remedial job or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, she is really an elitist. That whole shtick about that she's some poor, but no, she grew up upper middle class. She went to BU. It's one of the most expensive schools you can possibly imagine, and obviously not for all that money. Didn't turn out a Mensa candidate, did it?
No, it certainly didn't. And, for someone who claims to be, for the people, she's flying around the country in rallies in flying first class, flying private jets because, she can't be with the great unwashed.
Oh, that's the same thing with Bernie. He literally said it. It's
Yes.
almost not paraphrasing. He goes, I'm going to wait in the American Airlines line? I mean, oh, God forbid. Who are you, the Pope? It's totally unbelievable. But it's really funny in this whole, let's just say, societal shift towards a more conservative bent. You have Bill Maher, a longtime liberal. I love this. He said Harvard is an a-hole factory. I think that is totally fascinating, interesting, and funny. And you have these breaks, like even Fetterman is calling the Dems to task on the border. And on the border, it's really kind of interesting, Dr. Lopkin, your comments on this, is that there was some discussion that Biden signed some executive orders, basically, clamping down on border activity early in his presidency, but it was basically thrown out, and they wrote some auto pen crap. So
Yeah,
very interesting.
Jake Tapper actually touches on that in his book Original Sin, where Joe Biden wanted to shut the border down. He intended to do this early in his presidency, and the leftists around him kept him from doing it. And in fact, um, former I'm blanking on his name, the former Speaker of the House.
Would
Um,
that be Newt Gingrich or no?
no,
It's
no, no, not
what's his
not
name?
going
McCarthy.
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 Yes, McCarthy has gone on the record saying that he had a conversation with Joe Biden where he asked him, why did you sign this executive order? And Biden said to him, what are you talking about? I didn't sign any such order.
I think the real villain in all of this is obviously Dr. Jill, but Ron Klain, a socialist, anti-American piece of crap, and I think he was very much behind all this. And if the
He's
Republicans
definitely
have any brains, they will, as what's her name, the former press secretary for Trump. This is an issue the Republicans can run to the goal line. Do you agree?
they can, but I don't know that Klain is working alone, because we're starting to get new names coming out. And these are people that we've never heard of, but they all have one thing in common. They're all long term members of Jill Biden's staff. So I think when
Hmm.
all is said and done, all of this is going to come back to point to Jill Biden.
Dr. Jill, doctor, a PhD in teaching. A surgeon. She's right up there with a surgeon, isn't she?
Sure.
Yeah, no question. And anyone who has, I know people have PhDs, okay? Uh, no one I know has a PhD. I'm not saying a doctor. They don't call themselves Dr. Smith. They call themselves John.
Yeah, generally people with PhDs don't make a big deal out of the
No.
doctor, using the title. It's it is something of a unique situation with her, because honestly, looking at her behavior, I think she has deep seated insecurities that she needed to be called doctor. She needed to be calling the shots in the White House. She needed to be there. You know, I think she needs therapy, is what she needs.
I think you might be correct. You're definitely correct, and I also think it's indicative of a lot of liberal relationships. Nancy, her husband, the great investment guru. You have the Clintons. A lot of these people. It's not exactly the Dick Van Dyke Show, the old one. You know, where Laura and Robert were in true love. It's a marriage of convenience. I mean, Dr. Jill, probably didn't even like the son of a bitch. I mean, he basically had to propose to her. I could see once, Dr. Lopkin, once. That and 17. You're probably not that into it. So it
Yeah,
was, and he bumbled around with this bumbling idiot who was a low grade senator from a minuscule state. The population of let's just say Indianapolis is probably bigger than Delaware, and all of a sudden she gets the chance to be president, and all that putting up with a mental midget and Hunter and the other crap finally pays off, and she was kicking and screaming. And talk about depression. I bet she is so effing miserable. It would make your head spin.
it wouldn't surprise me. But you bring up a good point about the marriages. I mean, we've been hearing a lot, especially lately, about the Biden's marriage. Not not all that it's cracked up to be. The Clintons, they've been essentially leading separate lives for decades at this point. The
Mm-hmm.
Obamas, there seem to be a lot of problems with their marriage. But take a look in contrast to the Reagans. Ronald Reagan got sick. Nancy Reagan devoted the rest of her life to taking care of him. The
Called True
Bush,
Love.
yes, the Bushes. I mean, there was no question about George H.W. Bush, and the first lady. They were together for decades, joined at the
70,
hip.
60 years, whatever. Yeah.
Something like that. Yes, joined at the hip. Laura Bush, when George W. Left the White House, she went with him. He wanted to have a quiet life and do things, without all the spotlight. She went with him. She was more than happy because they made these decisions together. And I think
No, wait, wait.
that's
I have to interject something because you have a very profound point. It's together, a healthy
yes.
relationship. It's a team, and it's not leveraging one for your own benefit.
Exactly. And you see this in all of these relationships. They were partners in marriage. It wasn't one was doing this and the other was just coming along for the ride. Whereas, I mean, there was never any question that after the Monica Lewinsky scandal, Hillary stayed with Bill because she wanted her own political career.
You
That's
know
been,
something?
people have been talking about that for decades now.
Karma's a bitch, okay? Because you invest just like Doctor Jill and Hillary, your whole life you let a lie. Okay, you sacrifice the most important thing in life, and I'm not being hokey, and that is a loving relationship and family and friends. At the end, even Steve Jobs said it when you're in your deathbed, no one gives a you know what on what your 401k looks like, okay? So they sacrificed that, and in Hillary's case, got Butkus. And with Jill's case, they got the presidency, but it's basically they'd be better off without it, okay? I think it's a disgraced presidency.
Oh, there's no
It,
question it's a disgraced presidency. Even with just what's come out now, it's been an abject disaster. And there are at least four more books coming.
God, you can start. That's just what I thought of this. When Joe, if because I heard he's financially bankrupt with no funds coming in, if he ever gets a library, at least he'll be able to stock it with all the books coming out.
Yeah,
He'll
that's
have one
true.
aisle, nothing else, just one aisle of the 10 books about his disgraced administration. Now, you talk about love or the lack thereof. We were going to say this for a little later in the podcast, but I'm really kind of perplexed with Michelle Obama. It's really interesting that there's suggestions that she might have been radical when he first was running back in the day in '04 or whatever it was, okay? Oh, well, I should say '08. '04, I guess. Whatever, who cares? But the fact that '08. So what's interesting is she's on this podcast that is literally unwatchable. She has a brother that literally is not a Mensa candidate, has the charisma of a light bulb, and all she does is first of all she trashes her husband, and she shows how entitled, like being the first lady kind of sucked. You gotta pay for your own meals, really? Like every American doesn't. And I had to fly. Sometimes I had to pay, and also very, very sexist and racist. I mean, and also the way she's changed physically, not just getting older. That's nothing, but she's gone like she looks kind of radical.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
mean,
I have to imagine that Barack's not happy with this because he's all about his legacy and about image.
well, between Joe and Michelle, Barack's legacy is dead. They have absolutely ruined it.
And Hillary.
And well, Hillary, not so much.
No, because he said it's my third term and didn't quite
Yeah,
work
he
out.
was he was campaigning that it was, the whole reason he was campaigning for Hillary was to protect his legacy, and the American people went, "Yeah, we don't want her." But I think he could have escaped that. He could have just said, "Well, you know what? The election wasn't really about my legacy. It was a repudiation of Hillary Clinton," which, let's face it, it was. That was,
Yes, it was.
why she
Trump
lost. It
didn't
was
win; she lost.
right. It was all about her. But with Joe and now with Michelle, he can't escape it. I mean, he's now
Do
stuck.
you know what's really funny? You're a marketing guru, and sometimes less is more. Okay, if after Hillary, he just went away, minimized his exposure. Sometimes, like a fine wine, he might have actually increased his popularity and his image. But it shows you it's like an old rock and roll band. Yeah, he was really great in the '70s, but guess what? It's 2025. It's over. Talking down to black people, black men in particular, about basically these black guys were saying it's kind of like, yes, N word, go out there and vote. Very condescending and very out of touch.
Yes, it was. And again, in contrast, I think the perfect contrast to that was George H.W. Bush. because after now he had his whole career in the military, in the CIA, in politics. And when he stepped away from the presidency, yes, he still had, George W. and Jeb Bush were still active in politics. There are still Bushes that are in office, local offices, etc. But when he stepped away, he didn't walk away from the spotlight, but he didn't participate. So the images we all saw was him in his 80s going skydiving. You know, him meeting with world leaders just casually, talking with them. And when he left, when he lost the election to Bill Clinton, his approval rating was pretty low.
Yes,
Just
very low.
just 6, 7 years after that, even before Bill got out of the White House, Bush's approval rating had skyrocketed because people started seeing him as a person and not a politician. Obama never took the opportunity to do that. People see him, he's a politician. He's never done anything to let the people see who he is as a person.
Maybe he is not a
It's
lot
possible.
there. You
It's
ever think of that?
possible. It's very
And he's not
possible.
and he should not. I'm not big on giving career advice, but I would certainly recommend Barack not to get into the construction business. Okay, write a book, maybe have some more Netflix episodes, but do not cease and desist. Do not don't even build a mobile home.
Yeah,
Am I
no, the
referring to his library?
library, yes, the
It looks like a
design,
prison, and it's $1 billion over budget. God, brutal,
the design of the library was horrible. The
horrible.
construction has been problematic from day one. It is years behind schedule, $1 billion over budget. And at this point, you mentioned the possibility of a Biden library. It doesn't look like Biden's going to have a library because donors don't, these presidential libraries are all built by donors. That's who pays for
And
it.
let me interject one. I have a
Nobody
question
wants to
for you.
donate to either one of these projects anymore.
Yes, because the question is, Dr. Lopkin, people don't do anything without a reason. Yeah, they donate to the but they're getting to they're entering that circle of power. When you
Right.
have a vacuum of power, there's no reason to donate. And Barack probably had tons of donations. Well, I don't know. The thing's been going on for like 10 years. I don't think he's got shit for donations now. And the
No,
other
no,
thing goes into, you can look at anything you want about Trump or George H. Okay, George, let's look at George H. He was in the military, did things I could never even imagine at a young age, right? Had a private career in the oil business, right? Barack Obama, that's why it's funny. It's not surprising. He's never done anything besides being either, a community organizer or basically a race baiter. He's never built anything. He's never run a business. There's no idea how to manage anything.
no. And that's the main difference. If you take a look at the Trump administration and the Biden administration, the Obama administration, the Biden and Obama administrations were staffed with career politicians. These were
Mm-hmm.
people that never did anything except for either run for office or support people who were running for office. They were all on the they were federal employees. They were all Washington insiders, or local political insiders, in Obama's case, Chicago. Trump brought in people from outside the Beltway, from the real world, who all had successful careers before they decided to take a break from their success to help the American public and enter the public sector. And
It's a
that is what the founding fathers had in mind. They did not imagine career politicians. They thought people were going to run for office, serve a term, maybe two, and then go back to their lives.
Is it really very indicative of that when you juxtapose Biden's cabinet, which was something out of a B movie? Rachel Levine, she's the Secretary of Health. She's like 80 pounds overweight. But anyway, that aside, you
80
when
pounds is being generous. She was a
I'm
lot.
being nice. I'm in a good. The weather's nice. I'm in a good mood. Um, but then you juxtapose that, and you look at when Trump's people, all very successful people in various aspects of life outside the Beltway, they go on. Let's say Meet the Press, any of these talk shows. They they electrocute the mind because it used to be the Republicans could have their head handed to them because they couldn't go toe to toe. These people, it's not even close. You look at the Biden cabinet versus these people, and I think that's one of the reasons Trump, in spite of all the controversy of late with the tariffs, has a 53% approval rating, and the Democrats have a 19.
Yeah, the basic difference, and you made a good point. You said the Republicans used to go on and get their asses handed to them by the
Yes.
pundits. Well, realistically, we have to look at the Trump administration as a separate animal. Yes, they're operating under the aegis of the Republican Party, but these are not traditional Republicans. These are not traditional politicians. That's what makes this successful. The fact that they're taking real world experience and bringing it to the public sector.
100%. And just to elaborate on that, you're right. When you're in the private sector, you need to deal with many people on many levels with many issues. You become very adept in that. When you're just a Washington bureaucrat, you're one dimensional. I'm talking about from a communications standpoint.
Yeah,
Your thoughts?
you get your talking points, you stick to your talking points, and God forbid anybody should go off. And this is both parties. This is how
No doubt.
politicians have been trained to operate. And it's really starting to show, especially now, because we have such a wide range of media covering this, that you're seeing the lack of depth in the career politician. And I'm really hoping that a lot of these career politicians take this moment and go, you know what? I'm out. I'm done.
You would only hope. You think someone will be running for the hills when the potential investigation comes to the forefront in terms of the auto pen. That would be must see TV, don't you think? I think you're talking about a 19% approval rating by the for the Dems could go down. I know. Could you imagine single digits? And people are going to be
I
shocked.
I'll be honest, I find it hard to believe it's as low as it is, just because you have the die-hard Democrats who will always say the
True.
Party is right. We always approve what the Democrats do. When you're running political campaigns, there is essentially this theory that you've got 30% of the electorate will vote Democrat no matter who's on the ticket. 30% of the electorate will vote Republican no matter who's on the ticket. It's that other 40% that you have to sway. Well, the fact of the matter is, to get an approval rating as low as 19%, it means you've lost that entire 40% and you've lost a good part of your base.
Without any question. And it's a whole thing that's been bantered about for now a couple of years. I didn't leave the Democratic Party; they left me.
Yes.
And it transcends race, religion. You have African Americans used to be at the core of the especially African American men. They can't go for the hill. Hispanic men. That was going to be the new base, right? Because of immigration trends and everything. Boy, have the times changed. Hispanics are now basically it's a 50-50 split going in the Republicans' direction. But you think about the 19% that do approve of the Democrats. I wonder if that goes into the whole recent study. Maybe they're part of the over 50% of Democrats that have severe mental health issues versus conservatives that are below 10.
Yeah, that
And I
was
believe
actually a very
the drug companies would want more Dems because there's a lot more Prozac sales associated with them.
yeah, that was a very interesting study. And mental health has been talked about for quite a long time. And in fact, the Democrats relied on mental health, claiming that that was why they were for providing trans surgeries, because it was going to help these children with mental health.
Yeah,
Now,
sure it will.
studies have studies actually showed that not only didn't having transgender surgery improve the mental health of the patient, it
Destroyed it.
actually deteriorated it in most cases. So
That would
that
not be
didn't work.
surprising.
But now we have another study finding that when you ask people who are suffering with poor mental health, 50% of Democrats identify with that group, as opposed to 10% of Republicans. And this wasn't, being asked, well, how do you rate your mental health? Because let's face it, you can't believe surveys like that no matter what they
Of
say.
course not. Yeah.
This was clinical studies of people with mental health disorders. And it
Well,
turned out that
may,
there were so many more Democrats.
maybe it is a good strategy for the if over 50% of the Democrats are Meshuggah, maybe it is a good strategy to have AOC, Omar, Crockett. Yeah, because the sick can associate with the sick. Good way to keep your base. No, it's a shrinking base, but it might become more loyal. Just kidding.
It might become more loyal, but we've actually heard from several prominent Democrats over the last few weeks who are saying that the left needs to split away from the rest of the Democratic Party. And it's coming from both sides. It's coming from moderate Democrats who don't want to have anything to do with the far left, and the far left who are tired. They think the moderates are dragging them down.
Well, go at it. I mean, and I think the only hope for the Democratic Party is spending more money with consultants and reaching young gym going men. That's
Yes.
going to do it. And to understand why they go to the gym, just asking that question speaks volumes. Volumes.
Well, I mean, let's face facts. When the most masculine member of your party is Michelle Obama, you
Or
have
Adam
a
Schiff.
yeah, you have a problem with masculinity. And
Just a bit.
for decades, the Democrats have fought against toxic masculinity. They have told men that they are the cause of everything that's wrong in the world. So now they can't understand why men are going, you know what? We've had it with you. We're out of here.
Can I throw a concept at the great doctor? I think this is just the beginning because now men feel a permission to express themselves. So I think they will increasingly turn on the Democrats because it was once taboo. It is no longer taboo. How do you like that concept? It might increase.
I think it will. And I think it was Jesse Waters who was talking about this the other day. He said the fact of the matter is that men like success. They want to strive for success. They want to achieve. And the Democrats, first of all, the Democrats right now are the personification of failure. But
They
even
no, but they no, no, no. We talked about this. You may not remember. Maybe years ago, time flies. It was on the podcast, so it was in terrestrial, that the Democrats embraced embrace failure. They
yes,
resent success. They hate when you're successful. Like you could be a down, like Hispanics, right? Let's look at that. We talked about that just minutes ago. When they were struggling, new immigrants. Oh, can we help you? You watch. Increasingly, they'll become the enemy as
Ab-
they're very entrepreneurial. They're very religious, very Catholic. When they no longer when they represent the threat, they're successful, which they're increasingly becoming more than even other ethnic groups. It'll be the number you've reached is not in service, just like they did to the Jews.
Absolutely. Because the core belief of the Democratic Party is you can't succeed unless we help you. It's a power trip for them. They need to believe they're right about everything. If you do what they tell you, everything will be all right. Except we've seen the disaster that their policies actually cause. And you just mentioned Hispanics are a very Catholic group, as a whole. Um, Now we've got more coming out that the Biden Justice Department was targeting Catholics. How do you think that's going to play with Catholic Hispanics?
Let me go on a limb. Probably not well.
Yeah.
Um, but also, speaking of insanity, we have two candidates, and I'll let you be the judge who's crazier. One person, both I do not like. One of them, I saw their concert like 15 years ago. Pretty good. But I'll tell you a funny story. It's Bono. Um, I came to the conclusion, yeah, I smoked a joint or two, but I came to the conclusion that, God, this guy's a dumb son of a bitch. He ad libbing in the concert. Do you know what some profound things he said? War is bad. And I turned to my friend, I go, wow, can you believe that? Like, wow, that's groundbreaking. So the boy genius, and both of these people are high school dropouts, Greta Thunberg and Bono. Bono says that the closing of the USAID killed 300,000 people. And then Greta, I love this one, another high school dropout and Mensa candidate. And I think she's actually disturbed. Bono's not disturbed. Greta's actually disturbed. Is on a sailboat was on a sailboat to Gaza. What they were doing, I couldn't tell you if I put a gun to my head, bringing to attention probably to the plight of the Gazans. And guess what? They're now. You should see the look on Greta's face, like a deer in the headlight. They had to have an SOS. Basically, they ceased and desisted. They're now dead in the water, as they say, because they had a drone following them. And commentator saying, the remarkable thing about a boat, it has a steering wheel. So if you're going in the wrong direction, like drones following you, you can always turn to the other side. Genius. So what do you think of that? Two geniuses, one girl genius, one boy genius. And
Well,
by the way, I love this about Bono. Just real quick is I forgot who was saying that. It's like he was relevant about. I'm going to really seriously like 2001. That's like 24 years ago. You talk to a young person.
I think it's longer than that. I don't think
I'm
he's been
being very
relevant
nice
since
because the
the
weather's
90s. Yeah.
Yeah. He was the coolest when I was right out of college, early 80s. Yeah, I don't even got the stupid songs. But yeah, so 30 years later, whatever, 35 since he's been relevant, it's like, and then, what's really funny? I don't know if you remember this, because, hubris is everything with liberals and with entertainment people. They never admit they're getting older or not relevant anymore. He did a thing, I think it was AT&T, to put on everyone's phone their latest hit. This is not the Beatles like in '68.
I remember
People were
that
saying,
it wasn't.
people were saying, get this shit off
Yes,
my phone.
it wasn't AT&T. They had cut a
Oh,
deal with Apple to be on all of the new
sorry. Okay.
iPhones that were purchased, and people deleted it en masse. They did not want the music on their phone.
And what does
And
that tell you? Okay, now wait, hold on, real quick. Let's just say they had the cell phones in 1985, right? And they had their latest hit, "The Streets Have No Name" or whatever.
yep,
Okay, people would have said, "Whoa!" They would have been calling. You get the one for free. This is amazing. It wouldn't be, get
yes.
this shit off my phone. Who
Well,
is this idiot?
I mean, take a look at Bono.
Oh,
It's not even. unusual anymore because we, change the name. We've been talking about this constantly. Robert De Niro, Bruce Springsteen, um, the two who were touring with Bernie Sanders. What was it? Joan Baez
And
and Neil
Neil
Young.
Young,
It's like, what do they all have in common? They're all past their
irrelevant.
prime and they're all irrelevant at this point. They're
Okay,
just
Joe Montana is past his prime. Okay, you're talking Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about like Otto Graham. These people. When the last time Neil Young sold an album, I mean, of any kind of I would 1990 maybe, probably.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the fact is, most of these celebrities who are coming out fighting Trump and how terrible all of this is, most of them don't even have careers anymore.
Well, that is their career. No, I disagree. That's the only thing they're hanging on to. And that's it. Speaking of hanging on to that 19% we talked about approval, the only approval the Democrats have is mummified geriatric boomers.
Well,
that's it.
It's also an interesting point. I have to wonder if they did not survey anybody in Southern California, the Hollywood area in particular, how much lower would that cause that approval rating to go?
I think there's a song, How Low Can You Go? It's like the rumba thing, whatever. Yeah, it's a good point. Yes, you're correct. Finishing up on a lighter note, because very interesting, fun. It couldn't happen to nicer people. You're talking about the implosion, I'd say dynasty, but I'd be stretching it. MSNBC, not good.
No,
not good.
About 2 months ago, they announced their restructuring. New programming came in a month ago. And over the course of the month, Jen Psaki, the former Biden press secretary, who, by the way, still claims she never saw any sign that he was deteriorating.
Mm-hmm.
Ratings for her show lost 50% of the audience of the previous occupants, which were Rachel Maddow, and there was another guy who also had the time slot. The whole reason that they restructured was because their ratings were so low, and the new schedule is 50% lower.
Well, Dr. Lopkin, we talked about the plus 50% with acute mental health issues. I have to say, really seriously, you could take
that's
a completely
the MSNBC
sane
audience.
That's her audience. And number two, though, you could take someone who's completely sane and strap them to a chair within a week of watching nonstop MSNBC, they would be in a straitjacket.
You do have to wonder if that 50% of Democrats that suffer from mental disorders are not just the MSNBC audience, but The View.
Oh, good point. Yes,
that's got to be
that's
their core audience.
And wait a second, talk about target marketing. If you're a psychologist or psychiatrist, get the Nielsen ratings, get the households with the cell phone numbers, and just dialing for dollars. Anyone who's listening to The View you got a house in the Hamptons. Are you kidding me?
That's it. I think this would be a gold mine for the pharmaceutical industry. Focus
a direct mail piece.
Focus the antidepressant drug commercials, focus the antipsychotic pill commercials, all of this on MSNBC and during The View. You've got your audience right there.
I like, something, Lopkin, that's actually right on. So anyone, can advertise, antidepressants or whatever. But I think if you're really going to get your niche market for not antidepressants, but antipsychotics, like schizophrenia, that's That's their bailout. I think they may be able to charge a premium because that's a very fertile audience. You might
It
have a
is.
50% hit rate. Well, Lopkin,
It's
another
true.
great show, and our listeners can contribute to our uh, continued progress, unlike MSNBC.
Yes, let's hear what you have to say. Go to exvadio.com/connect. Send us a message and tell us what you think. You can also message us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. We want to know what's important to you. What do you think about what's going on? Let us know. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at exvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Great show. See you next week.
We'll see you then.